Imagine the most terrifying scene your mind can conceive. You are thousands of miles from the coast, in an endless ocean, in a small wooden boat. The drinking water ran out days ago. The sun is a merciless enemy, and the only thing between you and death by starvation is the lifeless body of the colleague beside you. Now, multiply that terror by 10. You have just glimpsed the real hell lived by the crew of the whaleship Essex. This isn't just another shipwreck story. This is the true story that inspired the classic Moby Dick, but the truth is much darker and more disturbing than fiction ever dared to be. It's a narrative about how blind ambition unleashes a revenge so intelligent and calculated that it will make you question, who is the true monster? What would you do if you were in their place? Could you maintain your humanity when every second of life cost a piece of your soul? Before the whale's first blow, the warnings were given. A prophetic letter from a dead sailor, an albatross falling dead at the captain's feet, the whisper of a blind old man on the dock. All the signs were there, but they were ignored. The price of that arrogance was paid in blood, madness, and a pact of cannibalism that shocked the world. Get ready to dive into a legend where the sea is not just a setting, but a character thirsty for justice. The journey of the Essex is a timeless warning about the limits of humanity and the price of greed. If you think you know this story, think again. The truth, as you will discover, is much scarier. In the twilight of the 19th century, Nantucket was not just an island. It was an altar where men offered their lives to the god ocean in exchange for the liquid gold that lubricated the world. The salty air carried the smell of whale oil and the whisper of lost stories. Among these stories, one stood out, a silent prophecy that hovered over the robust hull of a ship called the Essex. Its 20 crewmen embarked with dreams of wealth, ignorant that they would become pieces in a legend of horror, courage, and ancestral vengeance. The Essex was a 20-year-old ship, but its soul seemed much older. Its oak hull bore the scars of past storms and the whispers of bad luck. George Pollard Jr., its young captain, carried the weight of an important name in Nantucket and an ambition that overshadowed prudence. His first mate, Owen Chase, was the counterweight, experienced, taciturn. His gray eyes reflected a weariness that went beyond the seas he had sailed. On the eve of departure, Chase found a small, moldy box in the hold belonging to a sailor who had died of an unexplained fever on the last voyage. Inside, besides a broken rosary, was an unsent letter. The handwriting was shaky, hurried. The Essex is cursed. The sea does not forgive those who do not respect it. It sees, it judges, and it answers. It comes in the form of a white shadow. Chase showed the letter to Pollard on the deck, under a leaden sky. "It's just superstition, Chase," said the captain with a condescending smile. "The only god here is profit." At that moment, a sharp cry cut the air. An albatross, a bird of omen, fell dead at their feet as if thrown from the sky. A retired old sailor, blind, who was always on the dock, turned his face toward Pollard and whispered into the void, "Fire consumes the land. The giant of the abyss consumes the iron. Swallow your greed, Captain. Swallow until you drown." The crew, a mix of superstitious veterans and inexperienced young men like Owen Coffin, the 17-year-old nephew of Captain Pollard, boarded under a cloak of apprehension. Coffin had enlisted to pay off a family debt, his gaze still pure, innocent of the horror that awaited him. Weeks turned into months of empty ocean. The Pacific was a blue desert and the whales, elusive ghosts. Despair began to corrode discipline. Henry DeWitt, a man hounded by debts and the constant bullying of some colleagues, became a shadow. During a desperate stop on the coasts of Ecuador, he disappeared into the jungle, preferring the certain death of nature to the slow death of failure on board. Hope was temporarily reborn in the Galapagos Islands, a primordial world. Thirsty for provisions, the men slaughtered hundreds of giant tortoises, stacking them alive in the hold. Owen Coffin, disturbed, watched the pile of struggling animals. In a futile act of compassion, he hugged one of the dying tortoises. That night, during a drunken game, a crewman knocked over a lantern. The fire, fed by dry vegetation, became an uncontrollable inferno. The island burned. The men fled to the sea, their faces black with soot. The Essex anchored in the distance like a specter. The air smelled of charred flesh and wood. In the confusion, they lost barrels of drinking water. That same night, a collective nightmare haunted the ship. Several men, including Chase and Coffin, woke up sweaty, describing the same vision. A giant flaming tortoise with eyes of embers, chasing the Essex through the waves. Coffin, in tears, confessed to Chase. "It wasn't an accident, Mr. Chase. It was punishment. We are the fire, and the fire will consume us." The atmosphere on board changed. Fear replaced ambition. It was then that the lookout shouted, "Sperm whales!" A pod. The euphoria was brief, for they soon spotted him, a solitary male of colossal dimensions, larger than any sperm whale ever recorded. Its head was a map of white scars, marks of failed harpoons. It did not flee. It swam slowly, parallel to the ship, and the men could clearly see its deep black eye fixed on them. It was a look of intelligence, of recognition. For 3 days, the giant accompanied them. Sometimes it would dive and bump the hull with its head, not with enough force to break it, but as a warning, a touch. A deep, low sound echoed through the ship, a noise that seemed to come from the bowels of the earth. The more superstitious sailors refused to work. "He is cursing us!" they screamed. On the 3rd day, the sperm whale disappeared. An ominous calm took over the sea. Pollard, trying to regain control, ordered the pursuit of a smaller group of whales. The boats were lowered. It was then that the giant reappeared. It didn't come from the front. It came from the side, like a warship, with an impossible speed for something so massive. Its eye was not on Pollard or the harpooners. It was fixed on the very hull of the Essex, as if it knew exactly where to strike. The impact was not a blind collision. It was a surgical blow. A crack of splintering wood echoed like a breaking bone. The sperm whale retreated, and then, with final fury, charged the already damaged point. Water gushed in like a waterfall. The Essex, once a symbol of human power, groaned and listed onto its death side. The hunting mission was over. The fight for survival had begun. The drift in the 3 lifeboats was a slow, methodical descent into hell. The sun was an executioner. The salt water, a poison. The rations of biscuits and fresh water didn't last long. The madness of thirst brought delusions. Men saw floating cities on the horizon and heard mermaid songs that were just the howling of the wind. Worse was the silhouette that some swore they saw, a huge white spot following them at a distance, a constant shadow. Death visited the weakest first, and then the taboo was broken. Cannibalism became the only currency of survival. Civilization crumbled, replaced by the primordial law of the strongest. When hunger became unsustainable, the terrible decision was made. There would be a lottery to decide who would be sacrificed to feed the others. The method was cruel. Lots were drawn. Whoever drew the shortest would die. Owen Coffin, the youngest, looked at his uncle, Captain Pollard, with a resignation that broke everyone's heart. Pollard, desperate, offered to take his nephew's place, but Coffin refused. "A lot is a lot, Uncle," he said, his voice surprisingly firm. The short straw was drawn by himself. The silence that followed was more painful than any scream. Before the execution, Coffin looked out at the endless sea and uttered his last words. "I do not die a victim. I die as a lesson for a time that no longer exists." His body kept the others alive for a few more days. The act, however, consumed the souls of the survivors more than the hunger consumed their bodies. One stormy night, the boats were separated forever. One of them, with 3 men, simply disappeared into the black waves. Another was found months later, adrift, with 2 bodies in a pitiful state, suggesting a final pact of desperate violence. After 90 days of torment, a ship spotted the last boat. Only 8 of the original 20 men survived. Owen Chase and George Pollard were rescued, but they were merely shells of the men they once were. Pollard, in particular, was catatonic, his empty eyes fixed on a point beyond the horizon. Back in Nantucket, there was no celebration. They were seen as ghosts, bearers of a curse. Pollard, trying to escape his demons, took command of another ship, the Two Brothers. The curse followed him. The ship wrecked on a reef, confirming his reputation as the man the sea spat back out. He spent the rest of his days as a lonely night watchman, fasting every year on the anniversary of the shipwreck. Owen Chase wrote his account. Narrative of the most extraordinary and distressing shipwreck of the whaleship Essex, which became a success. But the words brought no peace. He was haunted by visions of Owen Coffin and the intelligent eye of the whale. He became a melancholy figure on the dock, always looking out to sea, as if expecting a final reckoning. Years later, a young writer named Herman Melville read Chase's account. The cold lines of the text did not capture the horror he sensed. One stormy night, Melville visited the ailing old Chase. He told Melville what he had never dared to write, about the nightmares of the flaming turtle, about the murderous intelligence in the sperm whale's eye, about the voice of the sea whispering in the storm. From this seed of terror was born the great work of American literature, Moby Dick. Today, the Essex lies on the ocean floor, a sarcophagus of wood and ambition. And the sperm whale? Modern marine biologists, studying sperm whale behavior, have documented something peculiar, an identifiable lineage with unique patterns of white scars on the head, which demonstrates a historically aggressive and unusual behavior against vessels. The revenge, it seems, was coded in the blood, passed down from generation to generation. And so, on stormy nights, when the wind whistles and the waves break with fury, the fishermen of Nantucket still close their doors with a shiver. They know it's not just the wind. It is the last sigh of the Essex. It is the sea, reminding everyone, respect what is not yours, for I do not forget, and I always avenge. So what did you think of this story? It's unbelievable how reality is sometimes scarier than any fiction, isn't it? Now I want to know your opinion. Who was the true monster of this story? Was it the sperm whale, driven by an animal vengeance? Or was it the unbridled ambition of the men who ignored all the warnings and led them to cross a line that should never have been crossed? Comment below what you think. And if you were Captain Pollard, what would you have done differently? Would you have turned back home at the first sign of a bad omen? This story makes us think about the limits of survival. How far would we go to survive? It's a heavy question, but fascinating. If this video surprised you, it might surprise someone you know. Share it with that person who loves a real and chilling story. And of course, if you're not subscribed to the channel yet, do it. Click the subscribe button and activate the bell so you don't miss the next dives into real stories that are more impressive than movies. In the next video, we'll explore the real case that inspired The Exorcist. You won't want to miss it. A big hug, and see you next time. Remember, the sea does not forget.